Hey everyone, welcome back to Make the Music. We've been building a song from scratch, start to finish here in the month of January, and we're continuing that series. We're now about to get into part 6, where I'm going to go over synths and different FX things that I'm doing in my track here. We're really building this out, filling it out. Last week we tracked guitars and acoustic guitars, so I hope you're following along with the challenge. If you are, leave a comment. Where are you in the current stage? If you're not quite keeping up with me, that's okay. Just let me know when you're at, and I'd really like to hear your track when it's done. But I'm moving on to synths, virtual instruments, keys. I'm fleshing out the entire production except for vocals, basically. So vocals is going to be the next step for me after this, but everything else, I want to get everything else in the DAW. I think it's really important to have everything finished by the time you get to vocal tracking day. That way the vocalist, or if you're tracking your own vocals, you have the entire vibe of the song. You're not just tracking to a few elements, you have all of the elements. You can really tailor your performance to that. You can feel the emotion of the track and you can give your best vocal performance, because when it comes to vocals, that's one of the hardest things to get right in the home studio. So I'm going to finish tracking everything else. I'm going to take you inside my DAW actually and show you everything I did virtual instrument wise, everything I did FX wise, so you can get a breakdown of all of that. Before that, like and subscribe to the channel. I also have a free guide called the Home Studio Toolbox that contains a bunch of free software that can help you get started creating your own music in the home studio. So I hope you check out that guide as well. It's 100% free. Let's get into the session so I can show you what I'm doing with my track and how I'm filling out this arrangement. Okay, so let me go ahead and break down everything that's going on in this track. You can see my session here. We went over drums, we went over guitars and things like that. I added just a few more guitar layers. On guitar tracking day, I went over how I did that. But basically what I want to get into here is all the strings and FX material I have going on, which is a lot. So I'm going to solo basically everything I did, like FX and strings wise, especially in this final chorus. Just take a quick listen here. Okay, so a lot of cool elements going on here for sure. One of the keys is, when it comes to filling out your track, is being strategic about where you put these layers. So for example, you can see here early on in verse 1 and chorus 1, less string layers, less FX layers, and it builds in this reverse triangle down the entire track so that the last chorus feels bigger and fuller than everything else. So like chorus 1 sounds like this right now. Cool, still sounds full, doesn't sound like something's missing. But when you get to chorus 3, it just has a different feel, right? So that's one of the key tips here when it comes to filling out this arrangement. Less is more. Make sure the layer is doing something. I'm really I'm very aggressive about cutting things out if I think it's just redundant. So I really want to add things that really add something to the track and make it sound better, not just redundant layers that are going to become a pain to mix later on or interfere with the vocal. So I added some pianos, especially in this like intro verse 1 part. Added just like a low key. I just hooked up my MIDI keyboard, started playing some notes just to fill out this intro part here. Then I added a main piano here, just sort of playing some redundant chords. And by the time we get to the chorus, I have a piano playing eighth notes here. So those piano parts are doing something a little bit different, but add a nice deep texture, especially to these verse parts here. I have a little pad going on in the verse as well. And so the pianos were just addictive keys. The pads were all basically Expand and Anna 2. Anna 2 comes with the Slate bundle. Expand, I think I purchased it for $99 or something like that. It's just ultra versatile. Tons of sounds. Doesn't eat up a ton of CPU, which I like a lot. That helps me out a lot. And that's what a lot of these layers were created with. Then when I got into the chorus, yeah, I had some additional pads and strings here. I think I tracked this lead live MIDI, and it's not even perfectly played, but it works in context. It doesn't feel out of time. Like if you're gonna have MIDI tracks, pianos, things like that in your session, in your song, Adding in just MIDI chords, drawing things in, I think is perfectly fine for a lot of things. Some of the MIDI parts I want to play live. If I want to have it feel organic and I don't just want to have it feel super programmed, I'll play some of it live. I might do a little light quantizing afterwards, but I definitely also want that realism feel. Like these low piano key parts, I just played them. Maybe did some slight quantizing at the end, but I just played them. Gives an organic feel, doesn't make it feel like, hey, that's a fake piano. It makes someone think that that's actually a real piano. And I had this wub and note hit. Those are both just Anna 2 patches. So that's kind of the approach there in the first chorus, and the verse has some similar layers. I'm building on it a little bit though. And then we're bringing in even more pads, and I'm bringing in these choirs here in chorus 2. And these are all just expand patches, different choir patches, pretty straightforward, no plugins on them. But it's adding a lot there. Just doubling up the lead synth. You see this is the space strings and a 2 patch. I love that patch, by the way. What was really interesting too is as I went along tracking the song, trying to come up with counter melodies, not make the melody sound or the backing chord sound so pentatonic like what I had with the acoustic guitars, was experimenting with melodies on my MIDI keyboard. And what I actually did was came up with an interesting melody on my keyboard, then went back to the guitars and went, that actually needs to be in a guitar part. So sometimes parts of the production kind of cross over and they mingle together. That happens all the time. Don't worry, you don't have to record everything so structured one at a time. Sometimes things feed into each other. Like this production is really gonna, and the notes I'm hearing, the melodies I'm hearing, really is gonna feed into my vocal melody when I go to track it there. And then eventually this bridge part, I just have pads playing extended strings. That's what I have going on there. And then I added some brass parts during this final chorus, just to have it really sound epic. Those are just expand patches once again, but add a real epic flavor to the song. So we have some pianos, we have some strings, we have some choirs, we have some brass. You don't need all these elements in your song. You might not even need any of these elements. I always think it's interesting to add, even if it's a rock production, a fifth element of pianos, strings, something to give it some character. This song definitely, I had this in my head, it called for all these things and I wanted all these things in there, so I went ahead and added them. You may need even more production elements. You may need less, right? Do it for your song, but I added enough till I felt like, okay, it's finally getting there. Making sure each layer was doing something specific. Then I have these FX elements. These are just reverse swells, hits, things like that to make the beginnings of choruses feel bigger or to make things swell in. So for example, this is an FX stem. It's just like a cinematic hit in Anna 2. And then some of these were samples, but like I have 2 different swell samples coming into the first chorus. Now, I've done videos on this before, but feel what this is like with all these effects going into chorus 1. And then when I get rid of them, it's like a huge difference, right? It makes a big difference. And so it really took the chorus from sounding really good to the next level. Just some more hits. Again, less is more with these. I end up using a couple, 2 or 3 different hits. I'll probably end up low passing them, maybe bring them down the mix a little bit just so they don't get in the way, but it sounded cool in the moment and they were working well. I basically stick with those samples throughout the entire song, but it really helps, especially in this last chorus. Really hit how it's supposed to. And then lastly, I talked about this in the very beginning when I was tracking my scratch track, how I wanted the song to kind of swell out. So I added those FXs in here. So there's kind of just a reverse swell and the song finishes. So there's some delay tails at the end. I'll automate those down when I get to the mixing phase. But all that together, I'll solo it again for you guys. Really added this to the track. As opposed to muting it there. Just this would be a standard rock track, I guess. It's cool. I like it. I might bring down all these elements I've tracked just a little bit to let that shine. But really, gave this song the epic flavor that it really needed, and I think it really deserved. Like I said, in the mixing stage, who knows what kind of decisions I'll make in terms of level, but for now, I really enjoyed how that sounded. It's making the track feel super epic, and I'm super inspired as a vocalist to write some parts. I think that's super important, that you feel inspired and that you're enjoying the track while you're making it. So let me know, have you added strings yet? Are you going to add strings or synths or virtual instruments to your track? I'd like to hear it. I suggest trying a few of these tricks, even if you don't think you need them in the song, just to see if they work. And if they don't, you can always cut them out. But now the track is done. All that's left is vocals. We're going to go into that here in the next lesson. I'll take you through my vocal tracking approach, some of the tips I have for that, maybe a little bit about writing vocals, but I've got some work to do there. I've got a lot to write, and tracking vocals can always be the most demanding part of any project. And then we're going to move into editing and mixing. So we're following along with this challenge. Like I said, let me know in the description box, how's this going? If you want to follow along with this, like and subscribe to the channel. But thanks so much for watching. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time.